So we're now getting to the portion of this course that deals with actually drawing and creating wireframes. So this is where things will start to get a little bit more interesting, hopefully. Some of the earlier stuff can be a little bit dry, but it is very important that you have that base of knowledge so that we can move into this section of the course. Now, a few notes about drawing before we actually get started with a tutorial here. There are a large number of different ways to draw in Mastercam. And the nice thing with Mastercam is that there isn't necessarily a right and a wrong way to do something. If you find a way to do something that's faster and works better for you, then absolutely do that method. And you will find each person has their own style. And in my years of working with this software, I've definitely learned a lot from watching other people work with Mastercam and why they do things a certain way that maybe I don't. You'll always find new little tricks and things different people have picked up along the way that can make your life easier when working with Mastercam. Just a couple of methods of drawing we'll consider in this course is the fast point method and the manual drawing method, or rather, I guess the auto cursor drawing method would be more apt way to describe that. Basically, you've already seen how the fast point system works if you watch the tutorial on that, but just as a review, if you select some type of wireframe tool, I'll use a point position in this case, you simply select a feature and start typing where you want it to be placed in the X and Y axis. So I can type 5.5, you separate your dimensions by commas, so 5.5 comma 2.2, enter. And if I zoom out, I was zoomed really far in apparently. If I zoom out, you'll notice that there is now a point way out here at that exact position I typed. Now, you can do this as many times as you want. I can create many features this way. I can do 5 by 2 this time. You'll see another point pops up. I can just keep typing new features. 6 by 1, 2 by 2. You can keep typing these numbers and just pressing enter, and you'll keep creating new features at those exact positions. Now, that is very useful for placing geometry when you know where it has to go. Another additional benefit of the fast point menu specifically is that it can also do simple math for you. So for example, if I start typing here, let's say I know that the x value of this point is going to be 5, but I don't know what the y dimension of it is. Maybe I'm looking at a drawing and I can see that it's I need to put a point at the center of the right side of the part, and I know that the part is 12.375 inches tall. I can type 12.375. Obviously, this is a useful feature when the math is harder to do in your head, because if it's just whole numbers, usually you can just figure it out. But if you're dealing with a very complicated drawing, that might not be so easy. So say the whole side of the part's 12.375, and I know that I need to come down, say 0.223 to get to one marker, and then I need to come down another 1.764 to get to the position I want. Now, you'll notice all I did here, the first dimension I knew was 5 in x, so I typed 5, then a comma, then I started typing my equation for the y dimension. So as long as I don't enter another comma, all of these numbers will be combined in order to get the y dimension. So I typed 12.375 minus 0.223 minus 1.764. Now if I click enter, you'll notice wherever that ended up, way up here, the y dimension of this point is now the result of that string of numbers I put for the y dimension. Now that's quite helpful again if you either know the exact position of where you're putting a point, or you can solve it with some simple math. Even if you need to type that math into Mastercam and have it do it for you, it can be quite useful. Now, for this particular video, we're going to focus on point position and how drawing with point position works. Now, you just saw one method of using fast point. Another method is simply clicking where you want points to be. Now, with points anyways, this isn't the most precise method because you're just basically guessing where you're creating these points. You don't have any real method of measuring this, which is why fast point would be helpful here. The only thing you can snap to on a fresh drawing is the origin. So I can place a point at the origin here and it will snap to 0 for me, but that's about all I have to work with. Now if I delete, I'll delete these points for now. In the next tutorial, we're going to talk about line endpoints, and line endpoints gives a much better way to explain the alternate drawing style we use of auto cursor. You will find that you'll probably use both of these methods in different scenarios. And again, a lot of this will come back to your personal preference as well. Personally, I do use the auto cursor method a lot. That's what I usually am most efficient with and I prefer. But like I said, there is no right or wrong way, just whatever works the best for you. So you can have a chance to watch how I draw, mess around with the tools yourself, find what method you like the best, and if it works for you, then do that for sure. So we'll conclude this tutorial here, and we'll follow up with the auto cursor drawing style in the line endpoints tutorial. So in this tutorial, we'll pick right back up where we left off in the previous tutorial for point position. In this tutorial, we'll look at line endpoints and how we can use it, and also how we can use the auto cursor drawing method. If I click on line endpoints, we'll get right started here. As I said in the previous tutorial, the only point we have that we can lock to when we have a fresh drawing is the origin point. So I'm going to click on the origin here. You'll notice that every type of auto cursor locking will have some kind of symbol attached to the cursor showing what function you're going to perform. The symbol you're seeing right now represents that it's locking to the origin of the drawing, so that's important to note. Secondly, we discussed how line endpoints works with fast point in the fast point tutorial. If we type in the location that we want the line to start at with fast point, it would lock the first corner or the first end to that position, and then we would type in the second position where we want the second end of the line to be. Now in our case, instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the auto cursor drawing methods here. So you'll notice one of such methods, or one of such tools, is the right angle lock. So by default, anytime you bring a line close to a right angle, you will get this icon next to your cursor for a right angle lock, and as long as you stay relatively close to a right angle, it will stay locked to being a perfectly straight line. Now this is useful because what we can do is we can just click here somewhere, and as long as a feature is still highlighted in this cyan color, that means it's still able to be edited. We can edit this line by coming over to the line endpoints panel on the left here. Now there's a few things we can change here, one of which being the length of the line. So maybe I placed that approximately, but maybe I actually wanted it to be 5 inches. If I look over here on the left, I can see that it's just slightly over 5 inches long. If I click on this field here and just type in 5, enter, you'll notice that the line has now changed to 5 inches long. I can also change it again. Let's say I actually want it to be 8 inches. Again, it'll change to 8 inches long, but it will stay locked to that right angle that I placed it at. Now, the other thing you can adjust from this screen is the angle of the line. So if I didn't want this to be a right angle line, I could have proceeded a different way. So let's start over here. If I click line endpoints, select the origin like before, if I am planning on placing this at a specific angle, I can just drop the line anywhere. So I'll just click some random place out here, it doesn't matter at all, and then I'm going to come over to the line endpoints menu. From this menu, I can again set the length. So let's say I wanted it to be 7.75. I'll do that and press enter. But now I can set the specific angle I want the line to be at, and you will find this very helpful at times. Take note though, when Mastercam calculates angles, it will always do it the same way, and it always does it based on the x positive axes being 0. So this axis line right here that my cursor is moving along will always be the 0 point of an angular measurement. So that means as I raise up from that point, that will go into the positive angular measurement scale. So I'm coming up from this point to where the line is, you'll notice that it's telling me the current angle is 30 degrees and change. So this is about the 30-degree mark. Now let's say I wanted it to be exactly 45 degrees. If I just type 45 in here and hit enter, it will place this line at a perfect 45-degree angle between the x and y axis here. Now the tricky part is remembering that a dimension is always taken from the x positive axis line. The reason why this is important is because if we again start over here, let's say our line was actually over here. If I want to have a 45-degree line between the vertical y positive axis and the negative x axis to the left here, I can't just type in 45 degrees for an angle, because you'll notice that snaps it back to the positive axis here. X positive, y positive. Now if I want it over here, running this direction, then I actually need to do a little bit of math. Now, in a previous video we did discuss that the fast point box can do simple math for you. It's not the only box that can do simple math for you. And practically any box in Mastercam, any editable field for measurements, practically all of them can do simple math for you. So if I change the length to just be a even 8 inches, and now take the angle. Now if we take what I told you a minute ago about the x positive axis being 0, logically you could conclude that the y positive axis is 90 degrees. So what we'll do is we'll say that we want the angle to be 90 degrees plus 45 degrees. Now if you think about what that's saying, you're starting from 90 degrees, because we're saying we're starting at 90, but then we're adding 45 to it. So 90 and then 45 further. And what that's going to do is give us a perfect 45. Oops, sorry about that. It's going to give us a perfect 45 between the positive y and the negative x axis. And I canceled out of the drawing there because I clicked on the screen by accident, but it did complete that action for us. So again, if we use that same line of reasoning, if we wanted a line coming down in the negative axis here, again I'll make it 8 inches long. So just like we could conclude that the y positive axis is 90 degrees, we can also conclude that the x negative axis is 180 degrees. So again, we'll use the same exact method, 180 this time though, and we'll add 45 to it again. Pressing enter, once again we get the same result, but this time the line appears in the negative axes. So this is a very important thing to be aware of when creating angles in Mastercam. Just always remember that your 0 is always the x positive axis, and that it increases in angular dimension in a counterclockwise direction from there. If you can remember that, then any dimensioning you have to do angularly in Mastercam, any drawing of that style, you won't have any problems. So just one quick final point we'll talk about then, since we were talking about the auto cursor method. Once you have certain features created, the auto cursor becomes more and more useful, because now what I could do, as you remember, both of these lines were 8 inches long. If we wanted to connect these lines together to create a triangle, all I have to do is click the the top left point of this first line and the bottom left point of this second line, and you'll notice if as I move there, I'm keeping my cursor relatively straight, and you'll notice I'm getting that right angle lock we talked about earlier. But as I get down to this other point, you'll notice that my auto cursor symbol changes. Now the thing it's changing to, the symbol it's changing to, is the line endpoints auto cursor connection method. So you'll notice that as I get closer, it changes from right angle to line endpoint. By clicking there, I've now created a line that definitively is connected to both endpoints of this triangle. Now that's important, because if I wasn't to do that, if I redo this, if I click on this first point and I just think that I'm pretty close, maybe I miss it by just a little bit, I'll zoom in a little bit. So let's say I miss it by just a bit, so I go a little bit past it like that. So you can see the line comes slightly past the bottom edge of this triangle. Now the problem there is that when you're looking at it from a zoomed out view, you may not even notice that. However, if I tried to select this triangle, it would let me select it because these three lines are connected from here to this point, from this point to this point, and from this point to this point, but they don't actually close the loop at the bottom here. Now that will cause you trouble in some cases, especially when you go to create another new line, because now when I come down to this point, there's actually two separate line endpoints I can connect to. You can tell which one based on the line that it's highlighting. In any case, you don't want to end up with lines that slightly miss their mark like that. We can't get into all the implications of what that will do to your drawing, but you will have a lot of problems down the line, not to mention that it could cost you marks on your final drawing, as if you have lines that don't match up with the intended drawing, that is one method of losing marks because it's not in line with what's supposed to be drawn. So keep in mind that when you use the auto cursor method, you will get those symbols to guide you, knowing that you're connecting to what you want to be connecting to. And as long as you're careful to select those points at the right position, you can be confident that the line is connected properly. So I'm just going to move down here, bring up the line endpoints connection, click, and then I'll click the green check mark. Now this triangle is a complete triangle and isn't going to cause me any problems later when I add more dimensions to this, or whatever the case may be. So these same fundamental principles are used in all the different types of drawing geometry, and as I said, the more geometry you create, the more points you'll have to snap to, and the more useful this drawing method becomes. In this tutorial, we'll talk about the circle center point drawing tool in the arcs section of the wireframe tab. I'm going to select this tool, and then notice that the dialog box prompts me to select a center point for the circle. So I'm going to select the origin of the view sheet here, and you'll notice that now it wants me to click how large I want the circle to be. So I'm just going to click any arbitrary place because I want to set the position specifically in a certain location. So I'm going to click here, and because it's cyan, it's still in editing mode, which means I can come over here and change the diameter of the circle. So I want the diameter to be 6.5 inches. I'm going to type that in the diameter box and press enter. And you'll notice when I do that, the radius box follows suit. So radius being obviously half the distance, half the diameter of the circle. So from center to one side is the radius. The diameter, of course, is the full distance across the circle. So any change you make to one of these boxes will force a change in the other box. So if I make the radius 3 inches, the diameter has to follow suit and be 6 inches. So basically this is just an option so you can choose which way you want to set the dimension, whether by radius is easier or by diameter is easier, depending on the feature you're drawing. I can click the blue check mark, as with any drawing tool, to add another similar feature, or I can click the green check mark to be done. I will click the blue check mark here just to do one more quick example. I'm going to click the circle center point, or rather I don't need to because I clicked the blue check mark, so it stays open. But now I can drop a new circle wherever I want. So I'm going to drop another circle on the origin, click another arbitrary point, and set a new size for this circle. So I'm going to make this one have a diameter of 3 inches. Now, of note here, many of the drawing tools in Mastercam do have this little tiny lock button shown on the one of the dimension boxes or all of the dimension boxes for a particular tool. Now what this does, if I just press the green check mark to finish what I was doing and start another circle center point, if I was to click these locks right now, you'll notice because I said that radius and diameter always follow each other, if you change one it changes the other. If I lock one of them, it will also lock both of them. But what this allows you to do is if you need to create several features that are the same size, you can lock it so that it will continue letting you create features that size. So if I clicked, or if I typed in 2.5 inches, let's say I wanted to create a bunch of 2.5 inch circles, and maybe I wanted to create them at each quadrant of this outside circle. So let's actually make these a bit smaller. to have a more realistic example, let's go 1.5. Okay, so I have these little circles, and I want to attach them to each quadrant of this circle. Now, if I hadn't have locked these values, after I clicked the first position, that would be it. I'd have to start a new operation, type everything in again, and click the next position. By using this lock tool, though, I can just keep clicking positions that I want circles placed at. I could put one in the center here. I could put one at the quadrants of the middle circle as well. I can just keep placing these anywhere I want, freehand or locked to different points. This doesn't just apply to circles. This applies to pretty much every drawing feature I can think of in Mastercam. And it allows you to quickly recreate similar geometry and is very useful on many types of drawings that you'll certainly work with.